Hi, I'm Karen Hite, and welcome to the Headsmack podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Headsmack podcast. My name is Paul Pavolny, and I have another misfit with me. I have Karen Hite with me, and Karen is the COO of Committed Mastermind and co-founder of Hite International, a digital market agency she built alongside her husband over the last 6 years. Through Committed Mastermind, Karen equips service-based business owners with the tools, community, and connections they need to grow. She also organizes events like the Commitment Summit and Scale with Stability, bringing industry leaders together to share insights and strategies. Karen's mission is simple: make sure business owners have the knowledge and support to reach their full potential. Karen, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Paul? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm looking forward to this conversation and so glad you're on. And I think we're going to have a good time. We're going to talk about a lot of things that I think are going to help business owners to scale and to have a business that thrives. And so what I usually like to start with my podcast is just kind of hear a little bit about your backstory, a little bit about your origin story. So tell me a little bit about Karen, and you can go as far back as you feel would be relevant.
Yeah, of course. How back can we go, really, right? I was born in Nicaragua. So I grew up in Latin America. Definitely didn't see myself owning a business, especially serving the US market. So what I'm doing today is like far beyond any dream that I had growing up. I really thought that I would just go to school, get a degree, find a good job, and hopefully make a good living for myself. I never thought I would be supporting business owners, much less having my own business and multiple businesses. As I was, working on figuring out like what I wanted to do, I initially wanted to be an architect. That was my dream. I then got a scholarship to come to the US for a full ride scholarship, which was, I think, the biggest blessing. Obviously, that completely shifted my path in life. And through that, I got to meet JC, my now husband. And it's crazy how we got to meet through that. He was at the university at the same time that I was here. We never met while I was in the university. It was until I graduated and I was back in Nicaragua that we actually connected. And it's pretty crazy because he then ended up moving to Nicaragua. We lived there for the last, 11 years before. 2 years ago, we moved back to the US. And through that process, we started just playing around. He's always been an entrepreneur at heart and had played with, creating businesses. But it was until we really started working together as a couple that we started creating, something that we felt was long lasting. And to this date, I think it's just such a blessing to be able to work next to him. We're so different in so many ways. We're definitely a contrast, in any way possible. But it has been one of the biggest blessings and challenges I think that we've faced, both of us, running a business while also trying to be present parents and navigating just the ups and downs of business and marriage as well, because marriage is already hard. It's already complex in many ways. And I don't know, I feel really blessed to be able to go through this journey, even while we're so different, right? And coming from different backgrounds as well. I think that adds a lot to the relationship that we have today. And those different perspectives really help. And running businesses together is fun. We get to do it with our team, and that's I think one of the biggest blessings that we have. This can definitely not be done just by the two of us by any means.
Right.
Like today we get to support other businesses that are trying to do the same thing, right? They're trying to grow their businesses. They're wanting to do it in a way that they can feel fulfilled. I think that's one of the biggest struggles business owners have. You started the business because maybe you were really good at the thing that you were doing. And then you decided, why not do this for myself? Or you wanted to provide something for your family. But then along the way, just because of the complexity of owning a business, right, you can feel very lost. And it's such a real thing. And the fact that we get to not only experience that, but help others along the way, it's really encouraging.
That's awesome. So how did that transition from studying architecture to being an entrepreneur and owning a business? What was that like?
It has been, I think, very challenging, not only architecture, but just coming from a third world country mentality, I think like a lot of people don't really understand unless you have been, you have lived in a third world country, understand the different brains or that you have. Like you just have different perspective. And I think that more than wanting to be an architect. If anything, I think wanting to be an architect just like really helped me with business. Normally, when I went to school, I went actually for interior design. That was the degree that my scholarship allowed me, because interior design is a lot quicker. You don't have to do like so many specialties and things like that, like you have to do with architecture. But it's all focused on problem solving at the end of the day,
Yeah.
in a way that you make it beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, but more importantly, like you're solving problems, whether it's in a like this space, and this are all the things that we want to accomplish here, and this is the feeling that we want to create, and this is the accessibility that we want to have for the spaces for people, and it really is problem solving at the end of the day. And that for me translated more into operations, more into actually CRM implementation. I started using tools at school when I was doing interior design, and I really loved the technical side of all of that. And so when I started using like CRMs, it just became really natural to me. And so I think it actually helped me more than anything.
So, with coming from Nicaragua, was there, was entrepreneurship frowned upon? Was it encouraged? Did you have to flip some mindsets into being able to think like an entrepreneur?
I think in business, you have to have two sides on one coin. The visionary perspective, right, of like where you want to go, and the operational savviness to be able to make this dream a reality. I think I really honed into that operational side just because my initial thought process with anything, even today, I have to like fight it a little bit, but even today, is how could this idea go wrong? And so it creates
Right, right.
really challenging conversations, when you're talking to your husband about an idea. But also, I've learned to, take advantage of this gift that I have. I see it as a gift, right?
Yeah,
Like, how can we,
yeah,
and not because I try to be on a negative side, but more importantly, I think it's just trying to understand how can we make this possible, and having just with anything, like any gift that you have, right? If you combine that gift with love, it's something it's biblical, right? If you have wisdom but you don't combine it with love, then it's not going to be well received. It's actually going to hurt the person that you are trying to provide this wisdom to. I think
yeah.
same with this operational gift that I feel like I have, right? Like if I'm not cautious on how I communicate this, it could hurt the other person. So I think I didn't start wanting to be an entrepreneur. It really scared me because that visionary aspect it's not something that comes natural to me. I really have to force myself. But
Yeah.
I think that through business, I've learned to not only accept the reality that we need visionaries in the world, but to love, that. And I think there's this friction between visionaries and integrators that happen a lot of the times. When in any company, I see it all the time with the businesses that I support. I'm constantly in between the integrator and the CEO, like the CEO and the CEO, because I'm like, I totally understand the vision that you have. I see it all the time. This is the conversations
Yeah.
that I have with my husband, and I'm trying to be that bridge that is bridging just that gap between these two key elements in a business.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you first started venturing into this new world of building a business with your husband and stuff, what were some of the things that you had to overcome, or some of the challenges that you had to overcome? Especially in that starting off in something new like that. What were some of the things that you felt you overcame to get to where you're at?
I think creating our own framework of communication was number one. Just because of everything I've shared so far, sometimes I tended to be in the past a lot strong with my opinion, or like I would voice something out in terms of like asking questions, but really there were like criticisms, and there's a time and a place for that, right? Like there's a time and a place for a visionary to like, hey, like sometimes they just want to dream. And so creating that
You're right.
opportunity where we are able to understand, okay, JC, is this idea that you have, are we dreaming? Are we casting vision? Are we trying to like see what's possible, or do you want me to kind of like understand more of the details of that? And just that allowed us to have better communication, because then the other person doesn't feel like I'm destroying that idea right away. And
Right, right,
also
right.
I have my own space to be able to, that is still important. It's still important for us to be able to figure that out, right? All the details in order to make it happen, but there's time and place for that. I think the other thing that as we're working together, we've realized that we, especially with owning like different businesses and just, missions and activities that we do, like the events specifically, having key roles that, if you're responsible of that, you're taking care of that, that's great. I trust you with that. If you need help, come, like, I'm happy to support as well, but we have clear responsibilities from both sides. And that allows us to, just have our own like way of, because we do things in a very different way than the other, right? So like it allows us to have that space where we can own the thing. And if I'm failing at something, or if I need some help, I can say, hey, I'm raising my hand, I need help here. But it's
Yeah.
allowing us to both blossom, in the areas that we want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Now, with your businesses, they, for sure, they haven't always been the way they are now. So,
Yeah.
what were some of those early businesses that you realized that were good, and some of them that weren't so good, or some that maybe you put aside and said, "This is not for us for right now"? What was that journey like in just trying to find your thing?
Yeah, I think especially depending, even one business, depending on the season that you're in, you might be full force on it, and then you might, take your foot off the gas a little bit and focus on the thing. I think you have to constantly evaluate, especially now with AI, for example, what's the future holding for us as business owners, and what will really help. If I think we're less focused on the business itself, and more focused on what is the solution I want to bring for the problem my specific avatar has. And I think we always have to like be in that as business owners, right? We have to be in that. Our people, our team, our integrators, yes, they need to be solely focused on the thing that they're doing, but as business owners. And so I think, we started a business, like our first business, actually, JC started it. And we had just been like, we had just gotten married. He
Yeah,
was just starting it, and it was an English school. So we were in Nicaragua, and he was doing a virtual English school. So he had teachers. He was developing a platform. This was before AI, so it was expensive. It was something that, first off, he's not a teacher. Second off, he doesn't really speak Spanish, so that was already a challenge. And
wow.
third, like I was not involved as well in the business, and so that created some um, I think opportunities. As I mentioned, like he's very much visionary. I'm more the integrator. And we learned through that we needed to like work together instead of like working apart, but just have like clear segmentations of responsibilities. That we actually, like, we had, I think, like hundreds of people in the platform at a point. We had some really good partnerships going on, but it was just not the business for us. It led to us starting our digital marketing agency, and that was like just a real blessing. That journey has been incredible, just because of all the things you learn. If you're an agency
Yeah,
owner, you're sort of like in one of the most chaotic, I think, businesses that probably are out there.
yeah,
Completely, they're changing all the time. A lot of the times it's not even your, like, you don't have control over the things that are changed, like the algorithm. You're just like a reaction to the changes that are happening, that affect your clients. And you're really put into a very tricky situation sometimes, but we're enjoying it. And that's one of the things, that's one of the areas that I'm really having a lot of fun, supporting Hispanic business owners, specifically contractors. And so I get to do it in Spanish. I get
yeah.
to serve that audience and share a little bit of what we have done throughout the years, in the contractor market and in English, right? But now bringing that to Spanish, and our team is enjoying it as well.
So, how did that transition happen from teaching to having a digital agency? Was it something that you met somebody, you saw something, you read something? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, so we had the business, and at that point, when you have a business, most of the time, one of the people in the relationship is like the entrepreneur, and the other one is more of like
Yeah.
okay, well, the stability, right? Like I have my steady income. That was me. I was the steady income, the stability
Right.
of
Right.
us. And so I started in like sales. Then I went into another job that had like just marketing. So I started getting into like social media. Then I got hired by an agency to do more of operational stuff for the sales department. And so I learned about the agency itself, that space, and just more on like the operational side. I was part of the team that was implementing we moved from like HubSpot to Salesforce. Then I became the Salesforce admin for the entire company. That was over 350 team members. Back then when team members actually meant, like growth in the business. Now it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, like, that's not efficient. Now you have AI. But back then, having 350 team members was pretty crazy. And through that, the company that I was working with, like the owners got to meet JC and offer him also a position there with like minority equity. And so we became minority equity owners in the agency, which was kind of crazy. And then we exited that. We decided that we wanted to like do something on our own, and that's how we got into the digital marketing space. Focus. We started as a white label agency, then we moved into a franchise model, and then we pivoted to direct, and has been just a really crazy but fun journey
Yeah. Yeah.
to learn and yeah, be challenged. I think we have lived like 10 lives just in the same year. Probably.
Wow, wow, what a journey! It's always interesting. I like hearing people's origin journey, origin story, because we see people and what they've attained and kind of where they're at in life, and we think, well, I could never attain that. They're somebody special. And then when you hear somebody's origin story, you hear, okay, they had the same challenges that I have. They have the same struggles that I have, and so it's always good to hear people's origin story, because you kind of see that journey that kind of led from one thing to another, one open door to a closed door to a, pursuing a passion to realizing that's really not what I'm passionate about. I thought I wanted to do that. And it kind of this pathway that kind of leads you to where you're at now. So, with what you're doing now, I know you have several conferences or several events, talk about scaling and things like that. And you've kind of addressed some of the stuff already and started talking about that. But I do want to dig deeper into scaling and maybe even the hidden costs of scaling. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question and totally applies. When we talk about scale with stability, especially, and people think about the event, we always make this, I don't know if it's like asterisk, as we're talking about scaling with stability, because it's not like if you come to a conference thinking that you're going to go to one of those events where it's like hustle and, just go through it. And as long as you do this, you're going to be okay. And then by the end of this, you can focus on X, Y, Z. I feel like there's a lot of like suffering while it's happening. And although I'm all for like working hard, and yeah, sometimes you have to make some sacrifices. I think it can never be at the sake of, like it can never take away the most important parts in your life. And I think like that's
Right,
where
right,
business owners fail constantly. And we've been guilty of that. We're not coming in creating this whole movement, I feel like, of scaling with stability, where we're trying to focus. Our focus is for business owners to like, yes, grow your business, grow that impact, but never forget why you're doing this, right?
right,
And
right,
whatever that mission is, whether it's like a mission that you felt that God had given you in your heart, whether that is for your family, whether that is, you cannot lose sight of yourself in the process,
right,
your
right.
values in the process, the people that matter the most to you. Because at the end of the day, I see a lot of business owners saying like, oh, I'm building this for my kids, or I'm building this for my spouse. Yet they haven't gotten a date once in the last who knows how long. They haven't had a real conversation. They're strangers to their spouse. Their love life is I don't know what's happening there, right? They
Yeah,
haven't had deep conversation with their kid in a while. They are just there, but they're not like, sometimes they're physically there, but they're not like spiritually there. They're not,
right,
like
right.
they're there
Emotionally there. Yeah,
emotionally there. And there's so many, it is challenging being a business owner. And most of the time, our families, if they have never owned a business, they cannot relate to the level of chaos that we're handling. And that is
right,
really
right.
hard to be able to translate to somebody, right? Also with your spouse, if you are, the entrepreneur, most of the time that's a heavy weight that you have in your family. We have the blessing that we're both, in the business. So I totally understand when he's talking about, this didn't happen, or we lost this here, or we win this here. I've now learned I don't get excited about anything, and I
Yeah.
don't get sad about anything, eh, like in depth, like really anymore, because I've learned that, there's so many ups and downs, and the real gift is to stay calm, whether things are great or whether things are not so great. That's
Yeah.
not something that every couple gets to have. But having that relationship is the number one thing that's going to help you as a business owner be able to withstand, the chaos. If you have stability in your home. So we really focus when we talk about scaling with stability. The stability is within yourself, and
Yeah.
and making sure that that is priority for you as a business owner is the one thing that will allow you to stay the longest. This game of entrepreneurship is not to get there quick. It's how long can you stay on the game? And
Yeah.
that the focus can only happen, or that can only happen if you remain your focus on yourself. And for us, obviously, we're very faith driven. We feel like that is our secret weapon, in many
Yeah.
ways in our
Yeah.
business. The fact that we're able to pray about things and surrender this, knowing that this is not ours.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to your why, right?
Yes.
Is why are you doing this? And sometimes we forget the why along the journey because, we see people that are, we kind of went through a hustle culture. I'm not sure that it's as strong as it used to be,
Oh, yeah.
sacrifice everything, and, when it comes to, hustle culture and the sacrifice anything, something or someone pays. Somebody, pays for that hustle, that grind, that overcommitment, that overworking, that sacrifice. And so you have to ask yourself, is that something I'm willing to pay? And most people don't evaluate it. They don't stop and count the cost and realize, something's paying for it. And like you mentioned, it's the relationships with your spouse, with your family, with your kids, with, different parts of your life that you're sacrificing. And some people are like, hustle, hustle. It doesn't matter. Just keep going. And then you kind of get to the place where you're like, okay, I've got my success. I've got my 2 commas. I've got my whatever. And you realize you're alone and you're miserable and you've sacrificed the things that really matter the most. And so I think that's an unhealthy way to scale, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's crazy the conversations that you can. And I love that you mentioned like it's not like that much anymore. That hustle. I agree with that. I think like thank goodness we're getting better at that. I still see though the conversations that I'm having with business owners, money and growth. It's still the idol that we have,
Right, right.
right, in business. Like if we can call like things by what they are, and I feel like if that is the only focus that we have and we're unhappy or not, like I think there's something about being content at all times but still seeking to grow for the impact that you're doing. That
Right.
contentment, I that's the one thing that I see lacking most of the time, right, when I'm talking to business owners. And how can we find that contentment in a way, not because like we don't want to grow, but because we truly enjoy where we're at today, and we value where we're at today, seeing how far we have come and the things that are going to be possible because of this growth that we're continuing to experience.
Now, do you feel that the scaling with stability is a slow grow, or is it because I see in culture we see these people that overnight success. I got this amount of attention, and I got this amount of likes, and I got this amount of people coming through my funnel and leads and blah blah. Is can they both happen, or is it either stability and slow, or not slow but steady growth, or is it unhealthy to grow that fast? And what do you talk to people about when it comes to a stability that is enduring?
You know, I will say we have been through different seasons ourselves, of like really rapid growth, and we have seen the pros and cons of that. I think it can be possible. I'm not saying that having that rapid growth means that you necessarily like lose yourself in the process if you have the right foundation. And I think that's the
Right,
key.
right, right.
We found ourselves in that season, and even with all these things that I'm telling you right now, I knew all those things before. Like this is not a new message necessarily, but it's one thing to experience it, right? And to say like, oh, now I'm going to put this theory into action. And it's interesting that, like we dealt with anxiety and depression and all these things like while we were scaling and while we were growing. I mean, we went from having for example, in our franchise model, we went from like getting started in 2 years, 27 locations in the US for a franchise model. That's for digital marketing. That's unheard of, like that is
Yeah.
a crazy, crazy thing. And that is, I will tell you, the highest probably that we've been in our years of business. Yet it was some of the most unhappiest years that we've had in
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And so I think it is possible. I don't want to, just because I was not happy in that process, I'm not trying to say like, oh, you cannot be unhappy. But I think it is our responsibility, because we have experienced that and we have seen what that can do to you in your family. I think it's important for us to like send that message of a reminder, right, to other people to say, yes, it's great to grow, but don't forget about taking care of yourself. Don't forget, in whatever way that means to you, whether it's like health wise, spiritually, whatever that like helps you to stay grounded, having that being
Right.
grounded
Right.
is more important. And don't forget about the people that are the closest to you, because at the end of the day, that's your support system. When all this
Yeah.
clients and when all this thing, what happens when you're scaling and growing so far is that everybody's your friend at that point, right?
Right. Right.
Everybody wants
Right.
to be with you. Everybody wants to, hang out and all this stuff. When you're at your lowest, I think like that's where you really get to test relationships. You really get to test yourself. What do you really value? I see a lot of business owners, their identity is merge with the business. So whether the
Yeah.
business is doing good or bad, like they are completely like, they're not the thermometer, the thermostat, right? Like based on the business. And
Yeah. Yeah.
when we saw that happening to ourselves, like we felt in a season lost completely, because our
Yeah.
business was not the business. When you get to those highs, like the lows can feel like way lower,
Right.
than
Right.
they
Right.
are. And we were still blessed, we're still like, just, man, like so many blessings that I have today that, my family never had in generations past, yet, like we are finding our happiness and joy is linked to something that you really have no control over, which is your business. And so that's
Right.
I think the biggest thing to focus on as you're thinking about scaling your business. There are seasons, for that as well. And as long as, I think you set up a strong foundation, you also set, some like key frames or time frames, as you're scaling of like checkpoints. I think that's always important. And then having just a really good foundation and support system around you.
Yeah, that's so good. And I would imagine that, if there's rapid, almost unnatural growth, that you have to look and see like what's suffering because of it. Like, you can build muscles using steroids, right? But
Yeah.
there's consequences to that
Yeah.
most people don't look back and say, okay, I've had this rapid muscle growth, but what price did I pay for it? Like, what's the
Yeah.
consequences of that? And so I think even with building a business fast, it's exciting, it's awesome, it's wonderful. You get to show off your awards and whatever. But I think it's also good to self-evaluate and say, okay, but what did it really cost? Like are there any things that haven't really paid attention to that are the consequences of this supernatural, well, not supernatural, but this abnormal growth that is mind-blowing, but is there something that I've missed along the way, right?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've tried to do, how people are like setting New Year goals, and like, this is what I want to accomplish. I actually stopped setting those like goals for myself. And now I guess like my way of like measuring, the year is, if at the end of the year, I can look back at the last 12 months and think about all the experiences that I had, the reactions that I had to whatever scenarios or things that happened along the way. If I can see those last 12 months and really find myself in a place where I can have gratitude and I can find joy in the journey, that is for me the biggest
Yeah,
metric, I
yeah,
guess, that I want to have. Less focused on like, yes, I want to achieve and I want to grow. And we have teams, right? Like, our team members need raises, and our team members,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
have families. And so, like, I'm not taking that away. I'm not trying to create this utopia of like entrepreneurship. But I think at the end of the day, the business will only be as good as the leaders in it. And if the leaders are not finding joy in what they're doing, it doesn't matter how many millions of dollars. I mean, I don't know if you have seen the interview that Hermosi did, right, with Tony Robbins. I think everybody
yeah,
saw it.
yeah.
I thought that it was very interesting that somebody like Hermosi, that I think, especially in our space, like, we think it's one of the highest entrepreneurs, right? Like, has accomplished
Right,
like more than most people have in their like short span, right? That the main topic, they could have talked about any topic, business, whatever related. And the main topic that they talked about was how to find fulfillment, right,
right,
in
right,
life.
right.
And I think that was just a confirmation that as business owners, it doesn't matter the millions that you make in business if that's still going to be the question that you're going to be asking yourself at the end. And not nothing. I thought it was a great podcast. I found it amazing. I'm not trying to criticize or say anything about Hermosi, but I just thought it was very interesting because it was a clear
Right.
lesson for us all as business owners that that is it's cool, to accomplish all of that. And it can impact so many people. But if, like, I think he said at some point, like, yeah, I wrote a check for a charity and he just wasn't even happy about it. Like, it's not the
Right,
things that
right.
you're doing, is the intention behind it and the heart behind it. So at the end of the day, you cannot look at your goals and still find joy and fulfillment because of the things that you feel that you are achieving. I don't know. I think there's something to think about, for
Yeah.
each one of us.
Yeah, I agree. I think having purpose and having intention and passion and joy in what you do, at the end of the day, that's what it comes to, because you don't want to get to a point where you go, I've kind of like Solomon, I have all these riches. Anything I wanted to do, I did, but I didn't find satisfaction in it all. And, we imagine that, once you have a certain level of financial, income coming in, that alone will bring happiness. Well, it'll bring some, but
Yeah.
not a lot, not everything. You'll still feel a little bit of emptiness. You'll still feel a little bit of something missing if you don't have purpose, and if you don't have some sort of thing that really matters to you at the end of the day, when all of that stuff is shut off and you're sitting alone and you're like, okay, is all of that worth it, or am I still missing something, right?
Yeah. The key question there, because I think we all understand this, but for those that feel really lost in the midst of it, right? Because, like, you're like, okay, yeah, I want to feel that way, but how do I even accomplish that? For me, and I'm curious to hear your response, Paul, on this. Now I'm going to interview you on this topic. But I'm curious to hear your response to, because for me, when we felt that way, I remember I went through this book, the purpose driven life.
Yeah.
I was reading it when I was just being really challenged by finding like a new norm. When we started our business, it was all about, like, I was 7 months pregnant. I guess I didn't share that, but I was 7 months pregnant and we didn't have any insurance. We
Oh, wow.
had just like started the entrepreneurship. I went into a job, that I was a contractor, so I really didn't have insurance. So it was like I either worked or I didn't get paid. And we were really we were really putting all of our eggs in the business to try to make it happen, so that way we could pay for the delivery of the baby in 3 months, right? And that was so challenging, but it got us there, so, like, that was the drive. It was all adrenaline, all of this, like, excitement and just feeling scared. It got us there. But there's a
Yeah.
point where, like, that calms down and, like, okay, now I have my kid, now I can fulfill, like, now I can provide, now I can fulfill the needs. What happens now? And when I found
Yeah.
myself in that moment where I was satisfied, I really had to dig deeper to see, what do I really need? Because I feel like a lot of business owners are probably able to get, like, some salaries. They're not struggling. I think that's the scariest place to be in as a business owner, when you're not in need. When you're in need, you're in survival mode, and, like, things are happening,
Right.
want it or not, because your body is just like, we got to make this happen. But when you're not in need anymore, I think that's where I see a lot of business owners also. I felt myself lost in that. So I started reading this book. And for me, what helped was finding an opportunity, finding my path moving forward was more focused on how can I impact people's lives and
Right.
serving others than because if I just focus on myself, man, I'm going to have a really rough time. Just, I have so many needs. My head continues to make lies to me, all the time
Yeah.
about my
Yeah.
self-worth, about what I'm doing in this world, about my purpose. But when I focus that lens in other people and I can help them, that's where I found my own fulfillment. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear what you have found in your journey.
Well, I think for me, and I think this is probably universal, especially in 2026, is purpose. And I think, Rick Warren wrote that book, 20, 30 years ago. I think it's probably more relevant than ever is purpose, a reason to be, a reason to exist, a way to give back. And I think that's why we see a lot of the younger generation involved with different causes, whether right or wrong, whether you agree or disagree with them. They want purpose. They want a reason to be. They want to feel like they're serving outside of themselves. And I think we have a generation that kind of feels lost in, where can I serve? Where can I give back? Where can I have purpose? Where can I have identity? And so, for me, I think as long as I keep purpose, as long as I keep my why, as long as I keep my identity in front of me, I think I can be healthy. As soon as I forget who I am and why I am and, who I serve and what purpose I'm here for, I think that's where I get distracted with pursuing the wrong things.
Yeah. I love that.
So, so let's talk some more about scaling in healthy ways. And we've addressed a lot of things already, and this has been awesome. What are some other ways that we can maybe scale in unhealthy ways or scale in healthier ways that we might be missing?
Well, I think depending on where you're at in the business, we sort of have this like skill with stability framework that we use because there's so many areas in the business, that can feel unhealthy and that will end up affecting everything as a whole, right?
Yeah.
At the core, we need to have our purpose, right? Our commitment, we call it the commitment. We also have like the commitment summit, and it's ingrained in a lot of the things that we do, because we really feel like without this purpose, it doesn't matter, what you're doing in business. You can make millions, and then eventually you won't want to do this for a long time, right? So commitment's at the core. The next thing the next part of this like framework is 4 pillars that I think they're really important. And it's kind of like when you're having, they have to be balanced, right? Not that all need to be right, but they just have to be balanced out. And these are more related to the business pillars, right? So for example, your operations doing good. Your sales, right? Do you have an offer? Do you have a way to create leads? Do you have there's so many aspects when it comes to sales, right? If you have a really great operations, but you don't have the sales, the business is not going to last, right? So it's not going to stay in a stable way. You're always going to need to have something else. Your customer service, right? Or customer experience, like anything that's related to that, your account managers, like whatever in your business is related to creating the best experience for the customer. If you have really great operations, if you have a really good sales team, but the actual experience, when they're working with your people, it's bad, then they're not going to want to go for you anymore, right?
Right.
And so there's different aspects of this framework. And then outside of that is, focus on the entrepreneur itself, right? So are we learning constantly? Are we motivated? And are we executing? If we're constantly learning, but we're not executing, then we're not going to be able to grow, right? Because especially, let's just take the example of AI, right? There's so many business owners I see playing with tools. I saw a post from Bryce the Core. I don't know if you have interviewed him before, but he's such a great guy. And he made a post about, what do you say? If you're spending your weekends and your nights, working and playing with AI, he said, and not with your family, you're not doing it for their business. You're just wasting time, or something along those lines. And I was like, man, that is so true. A lot of business owners are like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. But have you spent time with your family? Have you even done anything with that? I've seen so many people that are have so many apps built. I'm like, which one of these are you even promoting? Have you promoted one?
Yeah.
How are people going to buy this if they don't even know that this exists? So execution, it's key. And I think the last thing that we haven't added, but we're probably going to be adding. So you're one of the first people
exclusive.
Actually about this. Exclusive.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, you heard it first here at Headmaster Podcast. fast. The first, another thing that I want to add to that framework that we've, talked about is this concept of gifts and what is your gift? Because sometimes, and this, all of the stuff that we talk about, we're talking about from experience because we have been there. This last year, I found myself in this new level of, we had depression and anxiety and dealt with a lot of that in the business, right? Like, and it was mainly JC that was experiencing it. So I got to experience it with him. Not fun. Wouldn't advise anybody having that. So please take care of yourselves. But through that, I got into this like role of survival. Well, if he was having anxiety and he was depressed, then I need to step it up, and I needed to be ready to go to give a talk, to go in a live, to go and do all these things, to run the parts of the business that I could, right? And support in that way. And, like through that, and I thank God, I will always give, it's amazing the miracle that he has done in his life, the fact that he's out of that completely, like he used to get to the point where he couldn't even fly, like anxiety in that way. And like I remember stopping we would try to get into a flight, and at the airport he would just have a complete full panic attack. We couldn't jump into the flight. And you would never think about that when you see him or you talk to him. You never would think that he was experiencing that. And it was a big struggle for us. And now he's able to be on flights, and it was something that only in his case, I know that a lot of people are dealing with this, and everybody has a different scenario, but in his case, it was a lot of prayer and surrendering. And it's a miracle, honestly, because I really thought once you go through that and you're in it, you can see how this can just go really far real quick, and it get really bad. But through that, now we're in a different state where JC is like up here and he's like active. And if you go and follow him, you'll see all the crazy things that he's doing with content. So like, make sure to follow him. But now I don't have to be that. I don't have to be in that survival mode, right? And so I found myself asking, now what? If I don't have to be this person that has it all together, that's taking care of the family, that's taking care of the business, that is doing all of this, then where do I fit? And what is my path forward? And I found myself praying a lot about this and reading my Bible. And through that, if you have, and I know I'm talking, if anybody listening to this, I'm not trying to preach here, but it's just what has helped me. So whatever helps you, I hope that you find it if you're listening to this. But it would be, I think, of the service not to share what I experienced.
Yeah, absolutely.
But through that, I found this passage of the gifts and how every one of us, we have a gift. And it's our responsibility, kind of like the talents, right? I think it relates to that a little bit. It's our responsibility to not only understand that we have a gift, but also to develop that gift. And I realized that first off, I didn't know what my gift was. I was so lost because I've been kind of like business owners, they see this business model and they think, oh, that works for that person, so I'm just going to do the same business model. And you feel like not excited about it. That wasn't your thing. You're not doing the thing that you're meant to do, right? Like that. And then I think it goes beyond the purpose and the commitment, because you can be very focused on your commitment and still not be developing your gift. So I started doing that, which we're going to launch something at Scale Stability, and I'll share with you if this comes out, before or whatever. But I'm really focusing on how do we help business owners to, first off, understand their gift. So yes, it's coming from a biblical standpoint, but everybody has a gift. So you can even go through this assessment that we've created to understand, even if you don't, okay, what's the Bible? What's all of that? Like, just be curious about what your gift could be. Because it really is like something more that every human is experiencing, whether you're a faith, of any faith or whatever. But and the second thing is like, how can we develop that gift, right? How can I do more of it so I can enjoy what I'm doing? If I am, for example, my gift is discernment. I'm very quick to understand, very empathetic. I understand, situations, and I'm critical about things, but discernment is it's a big thing in business, right? And if I'm not using that gift, I could be affecting my business. I could be affecting. And so like there's different gifts that each one of us has. And the whole goal is how can I delegate the things that are not, conducing me
Right,
to
right,
the gift? How can I create systems around, things that I don't really need to be around? And I think in more of the secular, it's I think there's another word for this. It's not necessarily a gift that the zone of geniuses. We have seen that before, right?
right,
So what's the
right.
zone of genius? Where do you develop yourself? I'm just taking it more on a faith aspect right
Yeah,
now and helping, people understand that from a faith perspective. Because I really want to see every business owner be the best version
right,
of themselves
right,
and
right.
really work from that gift.
Well, I think one of the things that we need to remember, it's when it comes to gifting, when it comes to your zone of genius, is what's easy for you is genius to somebody else. And I think we forget that sometimes. For me, creativity, for me, branding and speaking and kind of doing all that stuff. For me, that's easy. And for somebody else, they're like, "Wow, how do you do that?" It's like, it's kind of actually comes easier to me. And I think we don't take time to evaluate ourselves. And it comes back to identity as well, is we don't take time to see, what comes easy for you that's genius for other people. And maybe that's something you need to lean into and work with a little more and not try and be everything all the time that everybody else is doing and kind of neglect that thing that actually comes easy for you, that actually might be something that God has put in you to use to help others with. And I think it's easy in today's culture too to be so, we have access to so much information. We have access to so many people doing so many things and doing it so well that we feel we got to keep up. We got to somehow, be able to do what they do and do it as well as they do. But one of the things that I've learned in leadership is there are some things that if I try really, 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 really hard at, I can get average at, but there are some things that if I just leaned into it, I can get amazing at. And I think sometimes we do that is we pursue the things that if we try really, really, really hard, we'd get average at them. And we spend a lot of time, wasted time in pursuing those things that really in the end don't matter a whole lot. And so I love what you're saying there about gifting. I think it's absolutely vital for the business person to recognize that.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be great. I'm going to share it. And maybe I can share it with the people that are listening to the podcast. I have this assessment that I just want everybody to like learn what their gift is and
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
this is 100% accurate. I'm actually curious to see how accurate this is because I've been developing with AI just like everything else right now. But I'm really curious to see how accurate this is and if this can be a confirmation to people. I like literally went through the creation of the assessment because I was needing that
Yeah,
personally. I
yeah.
was needing to understand, like what is really the things, just like we do like the personality test, and it's actually it
Right,
kind of
right.
resembles that format as well. But I'm curious to see, like if understanding your gift and giving you a path forward, would that help you in your business? And especially for those people that are like have been doing this for a while and they're finding themselves in that season of life where like, okay, like am I really enjoying this?
Yeah.
This or could this be even better, than what I have today? And is there something that I might be missing perspective on?
Right. Well, and I think it gives you clarity too. It gives you focus. It lets you know, what to develop more, what to lean into more, and also probably the things that you don't need to be as concerned about. That you're spending a lot of time trying to get average at it, and I think that's great. And so that's exciting. I look forward to seeing more about that. And so, when it comes to, building a business and continuing to scale it and things like that, once you've hit a momentum, what are the things that you need to watch out for so you don't go back into instability, but you want to keep stable?
I think having, healthy habits is number one. I've seen myself, if I can have a structure to my day, and more than just the structure of like, oh, how many meetings, structure of like what I want to continue to work on in myself with the people that I have. as you grow business, especially if you work with people was actually part of the framework as well, because they're still a key element. Hopefully we're going to continue to be a key
Yeah.
element, working with people to support people. I know AI is changing quite a bit of things right now. That we're going to have a debate. I think we were talking about this. If I maybe like we were talking about this earlier with like Jeff Hunter and Jonathan Mast on this
Yeah.
topic of like, is
Yeah.
AI gonna like destroy all the jobs, or is this gonna continue to like help us? Today we still need people, right? So I think it's very important. But I've seen a lot of business owners, as they're growing and the businesses like are less and less in touch with each other in terms of like the parts
Yeah.
of the business, right? And as we were scaling, that's something that happened to us as well. Like when we were 30 people, when we were really small, we were like the leaders were talking to the person executing and doing the fulfillment, and that culture, was like
Yeah.
living. It's a
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
culture, right? And the more you grow, I think that is one of the things that will stop you from growing, when your person that is talking to your clients is not speaking the same language, when they're not
Right. Right.
acting in the way that they should be acting based on the DNA that you have built for the business, right? It's not that they're necessarily doing things wrong, is that is not the way that we do things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, like that is sensed by the most important people sometimes in the business, which is the clients, the people that you're trying to solve the problems for. If they sense
Yeah.
that there's a
Yeah.
disconnection between your marketing, right, the values that you're putting out there, and the way that they get fulfilled, well, that's with so many options out there, especially in digital marketing, right? If we're talking about
Yeah.
one of the industries that can be more affected by this, right? Now they can do it on their own, really. They could start developing a lot of things. So what is the thing that's when you do the exact same thing, and this applies to as well back to home service businesses, right? If everybody else can do the roof the same way that you would do it, because it's a guideline, right? What sets
Yeah.
you apart? Yeah, it's the brand, the why, the purpose. And if that's not lived in the experience that they're getting after they signed up, then that's going to affect. And so there's so many parts of this, right, from in the business that are affected. So that's why that framework that I was talking about earlier, one cannot live without, like if one is failing, the other three main pillars of the business are also going to fail, and the business will fail at the end of the day.
Right. Right. Well, and like you said, it's about people. It's about valuing people. It's about everybody kind of being on the same page. It's about the same uh, verbiage, the same conversations, the same way of doing things kind of filters throughout the whole business. And as a business grows, you can start getting detached from real people and real problems and the customers and things like that. And so, you need ways to maintain that connectivity and to have a healthy culture that is internal, but also a healthy brand that people are seeing from the outside, is that everything's consistent and you're doing what you say you would do, you're keeping your promises and things like that. I absolutely love that, and I think it's so critical. I think as AI continues to infiltrate into businesses, I
Infiltrate.
think people are going to be more and more important, right?
I love that
It's
word, infiltrate.
that's what it feels like. It's
Yeah,
sometimes it feels like, whether you like it or not, it's gonna
yeah.
it's gonna come into your business in some way.
It's gonna happen. Yeah. And one of the when we were at the highest, I remember the key conversations that we were having at that point wasn't necessarily like how to get more clients, or like retention rates, or any of the topics that I feel like you have growing up, when you're like trying to get to 1 million, or maybe getting to 3 million. Like at that point, I think the biggest conversation we had at that point was, how do we create more leaders in the business? And
Yeah.
that is something that, revenue is not going to create. That's something that, focus on operations is not going to create necessarily. You can create systems, right, to like create leaders, but that focus, when you're above, 5 million, that's really when we're talking about scaling, right? Like growth is
Right.
there are different problems that we're trying to solve there, but at scale, creating leaders, it's one of the most important things. And today, one of the recent acquisitions that we had in our businesses was this company, Appreciation at Work. I don't know if you have read the book. It's the 5 Love Languages. apply
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
workplace. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, Dr. Gary Chapman and Dr. Paul White wrote this book. So it was applying the five love languages to the workplace. And we recently acquired it last year. And the main focus is how do we create leaders? How do we understand the way that people receive appreciation so you can continue build this culture, but as leaders that we understand, what is the actual needs of the people that are part of this ecosystem, so we can lead them
Right.
better, encourage them in a better way, support them in a better way along the way. And that's our result. Our clients are getting the best service right out of us.
Yeah. Do you feel that that's one of the reasons that businesses plateau between certain amounts, whether it's 1 million and 3 million or whatever that amount might be, is because they haven't developed leaders, or what do you feel is it causes them to plateau?
Oh, 100%. I feel like if there's only one spark building that fire in the business, that fire is not going to grow that big, and it's not going to go for that long, right? So you need
Yeah.
multiple sparks, multiple things happening in the business that are all focused on how do we make this fire bigger, and better, and like it's impacting people. It's giving light to others, but it's really hard to depend only on one spark,
Yeah. Yeah.
for a business. You need to really focus on how do we create other people that are also feeding that spark. Business owners, especially like visionary business owners, they really rely upon a team, most of the time to continue. We're sort of like building, or maybe it's just us, right? But we have been really encouraged by building a culture that continues to feed on the mission that we have. A lot of the things
Yeah.
that we do today, you could literally create a new agency today without that many team members, with all the AI efficiencies and all the stuff that is happening. That's totally possible. But if you really want to go far, you go far with people. And that continues to
Right.
be
Right.
true
Right.
today. And so I think it's really important to understand how do we create the sparks to continue to happen in business, so that way, things can continue to grow.
And when you're talking sparks, you're meaning developing other leaders that also have the same DNA of the founder. Is that what you mean by that?
The DNA, I think, if you're talking in the sense of like values, yes.
Okay.
There's different gifts. I would say, right, that everybody. So like I would say, if we're talking about the gift, analogy there, I think there's complementary gifts, that one person can have, and ideally you're finding in your leadership circle people that are gifted in different ways, so that way the ideas get better. You have like more inputs and more perspectives and more ways to impact. But yes, creating leaders that are actively thinking about ways to improve your product, your team, understanding if like a leader is not, there's some leaders that are not very empathetic, with
Yeah.
people. They're
Yeah.
not, their social skills are not there because they're gifted in other ways. We need somebody in leadership that is empathetic, that can
Right. Right.
say, hey,
Right.
we need to create these activities for people to engage and connect. One of the recent studies that we've had from Appreciation at Work is that people are now not, like that saying of like people leave the leaders, like when somebody
Right.
quits,
Right.
they're leaving that leader. That's not true anymore. People are leaving other people. If you have
Right.
somebody that's well connected, that has friends within the company, that is, like there's those relationships happening, they don't really like need to like have a connection with the leader up top. But that culture is so important now, because now people are, when you're getting like bigger offers, and especially in places like home services, right, when they can offer them like bigger salaries by going to another place, um, it's even more important having that, creating those connections. And so one of the things that we are asking constantly is like, who's your best friend at work? Like not
Yeah.
necessarily that you
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
have, but like who's the best relationship, that you have? How are you staying connected? That healthy competition as well. Like I want to do
Right.
better because I want my friends to see that I'm trying, and that I'm like doing good. It's healthy to have connections, and that's something that we are losing by
Yeah.
focusing
Yeah.
solely on creating and having that just focus on ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're absolutely right in that. Is people don't necessarily leave leaders. Sometimes they do if it's a toxic leader or
Of course.
whatever, but for the
Yeah.
most part, they leave a culture. They don't like the culture that they're in, and some places will even keep people even if they're not paid as well, even if
Yes.
whatever the situation, if the culture is strong, if
Yeah.
the purpose is strong, that they'll actually hold on to people longer than even just for a paycheck. There are some people that will stick with a job that pays less simply because the culture is strong and the purpose is strong.
Exactly. I mean, there wouldn't be, well, it depends on which NGO we're talking about, but like so many organizations in the world that are active, that are going through, like, if we think in business sometimes, like, oh, our problems, like, there's real problems that companies are trying to solve, that are experiencing, in many countries that we don't even have here in the US, right? And how do they remain, actively focusing on the mission that the company has, when they could try to get another job somewhere else remotely, but they're still focused on the mission. I think, and it's not a matter of how can we pay less to people, because I think some people are like, oh, like, let's focus on appreciation in the culture so we can pay less. That is a benefit that, for the most part, you're going to have if, like, somebody's happy, if you're giving, good benefits, it's like you're focusing on other ways to impact their lives. 100%, like, that can happen. But I think it's more of like, man, like, we really want to create this kind of like islands of happiness. Some people outside of work don't have the best families, don't have the best, like, foundations, so if you can create these opportunities for people to enjoy what they're doing and feeling fulfilled, while they're doing it, why not? Like, why not try to create that for others?
Yeah, and it makes such a huge difference for the scaling of a company, and for the stability of a company is having a lot of that you discussed in place. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I can't believe it's already an hour. I so appreciate you, Karen, for coming on and talking about all this. And I know we can probably talk for hours more on all the great things that you're doing, your event. So tell people how they can get a hold of you. Tell them a little bit about the event that you have coming up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have Scale Stability happening in April 22nd to the 24th. So depending when the podcast is live, you might have already, like, seen it. You might be seeing it. Definitely come and visit us there at the website, scalewithstability.com. We would love to have you learn more about all this stuff that we're doing. We have a yearly event, but we really are focusing on this being a mission that we want to have others be part of. So whether you're part of our Facebook group, connecting with us through Facebook, Karen Hite is my handle. So we'd love to chat and just help in any way that I can. Our goal is to support as many business owners grow their businesses, right, and scale with stability. And hopefully this is something that it's a good reminder for anybody listening today. So thank you for the time, Paul.
Well, thank you very much, Karen, and I'll put the links in the show notes as well for accessing all of that stuff. And hopefully this podcast will probably be out just before the event happens. So maybe you'll have some late people sign up for it as well. But Karen, this has been so good.
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate it and excited to just be part of this. So thank you so much for having me.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.